they're moving in with, and I am thrilled.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. I won.
You knew you'd come back.
Humboldt won. We're all happy to have her.
That's true.
Ready for tonight?
You know, I have like a little introduction prepared to introduce Connie, but I just don't know what to expect. So we'll just roll with it together.
There's a lot of stuff going on in her world. Every time we talk to her, she's like, I got so much stuff.
I know.
Which is exciting. It's good to know she's out there working on this.
Yeah. So I'm gonna send you something.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on.
I'm waiting for it. It's coming through my regular email or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love working with Christine. I miss you. But I'm glad that she's everywhere.
I know, she's just like a natural when it comes to the chatty part, whereas I get kind of shy.
Uh-huh.
So we're a good partner that way. But I listen to you guys.
Do you listen to the circ through her thing?
I can hear it through the wall. I can hear when she gets into trouble.
Oh, when did she get into trouble? When we call on her and then we say, Christine, tell us something.
Yeah, I can tell by her voice when she's like, ah.
She'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Did you send it?
I did.
Okay. It's not here yet. Oh, there it is.
Hi, Pam.
I had to finish eating my snack so you didn't have to hear or see me chomp. Man, the light in here is really super weird.
I just realized that I bought a thing from Myrrh. I think I have to go pick it up from her house. And it was it's a print of one of the paintings that used to be hanging in the hallway on the second floor. And I was going to buy the actual painting.
Oh.
Then I
Which one
didn't.
is it?
It's the one that has the, it's like the pink little head with the plant sprouting out of it.
Cool.
I don't know why I like that one so much. But now there are some paintings out there I really want. Of course, I think I want the most expensive painting, which bums me out.
Hello, Bill Prescott.
That's right. This is an EDC meeting too, huh?
Yo, what's up?
Hey.
How's it going, Swan? Hey, Susan.
Good, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
So it's a planning commission and economic development and council. Nice.
Yeah.
What big?
How are you doing, Swan? Happy New Year.
I'm great. How are you, Bill?
I am good. We are, we're doing it to it. We're doing a full kitchen remodel. So the kitchen is ripped out to the studs, and it's a little crazy to say the least around here, but I got a quiet spot, so that's good. And a new kombucha, so I'm ready.
It is a good year for remodeling houses, that's for sure. You're lucky you found a contractor.
Yeah, we found a neighbor guy who'd just been working on everybody's houses around the neighborhood.
Nice.
Eureka, you know, he walks, he just like lives in the hood. And yeah, the tough part is like waiting on the countertops and stuff, you know. We had to get in the queue for countertops in like October or November, and now hopefully we'll get them by the end of the month or February or something, but it's a little crazy. But
Nice.
yeah. Susan, you still have all your Christmas stuff up, or have you put it all away?
Always. My favorite thing about Christmas decorations is taking them down.
Mine are still up.
I love taking them down. It is, it's meditative. You get to put everything back in the boxes. The house is all big, and
Yeah, right.
unfortunately, this year we had a new Christmas tree and it's huge. And so I needed a place for it up in the attic, which meant I had to clean a big part of the attic out. So my downstairs is not clean. It's full of stuff that needs to be organized. And
Ooh, that sounds like a good rainy day or rainy several day project, huh?
I'd say several day project. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Brian.
Hi there. See, I've got Christmas decorations taken down, but they're still right there.
Ah.
They're not back in the basement yet.
The hard thing about COVID is we don't have the rest of the family. So we usually have a train. So we have somebody in the attic, somebody on the ladder, and then 2 people downstairs so that you can get it up easier. But now there's a lot of climbing down the ladder and back up. And
Oh yeah,
We
that's cool.
usually go down to help my in-laws take down Christmas and put it up. So it was nice this year to not have to do that.
I think my kids thought that too. That is, where do you keep your Christmas things, in a garage or attic or storage unit?
Stuffed in every little corner of the house.
We have a lot. If you are familiar with my, I post on Facebook, it takes up my boxes alone, take up like my whole dining room. So Richard, my husband, did not have a lot of Christmas growing up, so he really loves it. And it's just so important to him. And I'm like, okay.
Making up for lost time, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he gets so much joy. How can you not like doing it for him?
So I heard from everyone that they could join us except for Mr. Ames and Mr. Benson from the Planning Commission. So hopefully they'll just surprise us and arrive.
And I see we've got Natalie, who is traveling, so we have her for as long as we can get her.
I'll be joining by video in just a couple minutes.
Okay. No rush. Hey, Connie.
Hi, I just got your addresses. Unfortunately, I didn't get to look at my email sooner, so I'm just seeing if I can ever try to work an interactive map on Zoom. So it seems like a disaster, but I'm gonna try it.
Well, if you share screen, shouldn't it work if your screen works?
Well, you know, it's just, what I'm gonna do is try to set these all up so I can, with all the addresses, so I'm not trying to type an address in at the same time. I haven't taken down my Christmas stuff yet. I heard that part of that conversation. I know it was supposed to be yesterday, but it looks too pretty.
You know, in COVID, it doesn't matter. You can keep it up. Kathy Miller was saying that. She's like, I'm going to keep it up for my kids to come over. So there you go.
Oh, a Valentine's Day, I was thinking.
For what it's worth, the trend in real estate is permanent decoration. You put them up, you program them for the holiday, and so Halloween they can be orange and Valentine's red, yada yada.
There you go.
We just hung little hooks under the house so we could hang up whatever we wanted, depending on the season.
Nice. We have another plan. Okay, I think we have all of our council here, and it's 5:02. I will ask the chairs of the other commissions. It looks like economic development. And Jeff, we were going to miss a couple, or there were a couple we didn't know about yours, but are we missing anybody from the Planning Commission?
Yeah, hey, Tiana, I think it sounds like you're playing hockey.
Oh,
Yourself.
yeah, Tiana, if you could mute. There you go.
So sorry, I'm having
I think we're missing 3. Tiana and I are the only. No, we're missing 2. And is our new member here?
Craig?
Yeah.
Did you hear that Craig knew about it today?
He did, but I believe he may have been traveling, a pre-planned trip. I can't remember if it was this one or the meeting on Monday, so.
Okay. Well, we're not making any decisions today. We don't have to make any votes. Can we just maybe get started and then we'll, if anybody joins us, they can join us? Pam, we did talk about doing a roll call at the beginning. Are we going to do a roll call for each committee, like first the board and then the council?
Yeah. I can do that.
Okay, so let's do a roll call for the council first.
Mayor Seaman,
Here.
Councilmember Castellano,
here.
Councilmember Moulton,
I'm here.
Councilmember Arroyo,
I'm here.
there she is, Councilmember Bauer,
Here.
Councilmember Burgell.
Here.
Planning Commission, Commissioner Ames is absent. Commissioner Mayer is absent. Commissioner Arriaga. Commissioner
Here.
It's there.
Reagan.
I'm here also.
All right. And then we have Commissioner Pesh.
Are you moved on to Economic Development Commission?
Oh,
now?
yes, sorry. Economic Development, Commissioner Pesh.
Here.
Here, there he is. Commissioner Sweat.
Here.
Sorry.
Sweat.
Commissioner Whitlatch.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson
Here.
and Commissioner Prescott.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. And so we are just going to get right into, we have a single issue today. That issue or that topic is broadband. We're all together so we can discuss it. And so I'm going to introduce Economic Development Manager Swan Asbury to introduce the topic.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Planning, and Economic Development Commissioners. I want to start by explaining how this meeting came about. Staff is currently working on an Economic Development Strategic Plan update, and part of that process has included interviews. Those interviews have included our economic development commissioners and city council members. And during those interviews, we talk about what economic development staff should be working on over the next couple of years. And then we prioritize a list of different projects. Consistently in every interview, the topic of broadband comes up. And when prioritizing the projects, it's at the top of the list for everyone. So here we are. The heart of this meeting is to get all of our decision makers in the same room and start the conversation about broadband in Eureka. What do we currently have? What do we want to have? And how do we get there? It's important that this specific group of people talk this through, because whether we're recruiting or permitting, we want our messaging and goals to be aligned. So we've asked Connie Stewart to facilitate this meeting. Connie is the Executive Director of Initiatives for Humboldt State University and the host of the Redwood Coast Connect Consortium, which has been working for the past 15 years to bring better broadband to our region. I'm now going to turn it over to Connie, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Hi. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation, but then I really want to spend time thinking about what you want in Eureka. So I'm hoping this is interactive, and I'm also hoping I speak Connie. You know, my boss Frank is on the call here. And I speak Connie, so if you've ever come to one of my broadband meetings, sometimes it's like, what in the world did she just say? And so I'm going to start with sort of a presentation to try to bring us all onto the same page, and then we're going to launch into a conversation, a robust conversation. Does that sound okay to everybody? How would most of you describe your level of understanding of broadband? Are you like mostly just a frustrated, I'm already seeing un poquito hands going up here. So let's, good. So good. I hopefully will not waste your time by doing this. Now, the only thing I have to, of course, worry about is, can I screen share and have the presentation go up at the same time? Oh, can you let me screen share, Swan?
Oh.
It's still disabled. Ah, there we go. Okay, so I have to first hit slideshow, and then it's going to tell me, and now I have to find you all again because you all disappeared. Aha, and now I can pick a screen, which is going to be screen 2. Okay, hopefully, can you all see me now? See my slide? Good. All right. Okay, so let's go to the first slide. Hopefully this works. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do some just introductory broadband 101 slides. So this is a little bit about broadband. You know, it's the transmission of bandwidth data over a high-speed network connection. There's multiple types of broadband, and we'll talk even more about this. There's fiber optic, which is primo. There's wireless, there's cable, there's DSL, and then there's satellite. And what service is available to you depends on your needs and what you're willing to pay and location. And I don't want to upset you all by saying that there's enough capacity in our region. The issue is not capacity. The issue is cost, quality, and deployment of our existing resources. And if I explain that to you, because I'm sure that most of you are like, what? Think about it in terms of, like, on Samoa, we have issues with fire suppression, right? but and do enough water for suppressing fires in Samoa. But we have plenty of water in the Mad River. Right? So how do we have a problem with fire suppression? Because we don't have the water where we need the water. We don't have the infrastructure where we need the infrastructure. So, so that's part of the challenge, but there is enough capacity here. So once again, the types of broadband we've got, fiber optic is the creme de la creme. And fiber optic, part of the reason I say fiber is good for every single diet is because it upgrades much easier. Once you have it in the ground, it's a longer lasting technology. It's the most expensive to put in. Cable is what most of us who have, well, those of us who have Suddenlink are experiencing. We're getting our fiber through cable. I mean, our broadband through cable. Wireless signals, if you're on 101 Netlink, you're using a wireless provider, and wireless is great for providing to your home as long as there's a fiber backbone or some other robust background. And then DSL is the old copper phone service. That's AT&T relies a lot on DSL in our region. And then satellite is the other service that's available for folks. And, you know, satellite's available everywhere, but it's not really good for latency and lagging. So like if you're trying to play a video game, you don't want to use satellite. So for those of you who like, what do we mean when we talk about broadband? The definition of broadband is political. And the definition of broadband changes based on politics. So the current federal definition of broadband is 25 megabytes down and 3 up. The governor of the state of California signed an executive order saying he believes broadband is 100 megs download. He didn't have anything to say about upload speeds, but he wanted to have download. And unfortunately, the California legislature only thinks that 10 megabytes down, that's not enough to do the Zoom call, for example. So it's really political. The word broadband means a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. So, you know, it's almost like I throw out a term and then I go, okay, let me define a term. So what is a megabyte per second, right? And why do we care? So, and why do we talk about up and down, right? Because there's communicating to you, and then there's whether you want to communicate to the world, right? So most of us worry about communicating down, right? We're trying to get content to us. And so that's a lot of why there's so much emphasis on the download speed. But when we're talking about economic development, we need to be thinking about how we communicate with the rest of the world, right? So if you're an architect or you're playing video games or you're designing video games, hopefully in our region or something, you need to be able to communicate quickly with the world. If you're on Zoom, you need to be able to communicate quickly with the world. So, we, in an ideal world, we want a high upload speed as well as a high download speed. So now let's just talk basically about delivery. So there's terms you'll hear me throw around: first mile or last mile, depending on your perspective. If you think about, I always tell people, think about a road system, right? So 101 is a big road. And when you get off of 101, you probably get off onto a boulevard or a avenue or a large road that goes through town. And then you turn onto your own street. So if you think about the broadband system that way, the last mile is the mile that goes to your driveway, right? It's the last connection to you. The middle mile is that bigger street that gets you to the highway. And then the big pipe is on the highway. And so what we have in our community is we have a lack of last mile to our homes. And we have a few middle miles that are already built that have capacity that's underused. And we are also constantly looking at ways to get to the big pipe as well. So the other issue is reliability, right? And so part of the way we deal with reliability is by having a bunch of diverse routes, right? You don't have, no one in our region, well, very few people in our region have only one way to get to their house, right? You know, if the road breaks or if there's a road closure sign, you still have another route to your house. And that's what we're trying to do with the broadband system as well. Multiple routes, so God forbid, a Yahoo with a backhoe takes out a line, you won't even notice, because the companies can just reroute and still get service to you. The other issue that comes up a lot is, are you getting what you paid for, right? So you can, I have spent most of the pandemic hearing from people who are like on Suddenlink service, and they'll say, but I still, you know, I'm still not getting, I still can't get on Zoom, for example. And so I tell them, have you tested your own speed? Are you testing your speed? And the two websites I have down here for testing your speed, one is for an app. You can put them both on your phone. You can mobile test them, or you can test them on your computer. I recommend you do both. And the reason I like these two websites is they report directly to the state and federal agencies to change the maps. And so in the state and both feds, we ask providers to say who they're serving, and the providers provide that information. But it doesn't necessarily reflect what's actually happening at your house. And so this is your way as a citizen of updating the federal and state maps. So please test regularly and send that data to the state. And if you are not getting what you pay for, please contact your provider. It could be that you have equipment at your home that needs upgrading, and then you're wasting money paying for speeds that you're not able to get because of the equipment at your home. So Frank, go ahead.
I cannot see that last link on your slide.
Oh,
maybe you could tell me what it is.
It's Cal Speed. Sorry. That's if you put in your you put in calspeed.org, or go to if you're Google or Apple, go and put in the word CalSpeed, the app will come up. Sorry.
That's okay. Probably my formatting here. No problem.
Oh well, I'll let you know if I put anything that close to the bottom. So And Frank Whitlatch is on bragging because he just paid for like a deluxe speed from Suddenlink. He upgraded his speed, and so he's living large over there, much better than most of us. But he's paying for the difference. He's a gamer, so he needs the bandwidth. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what we've been doing in the region, and then occasionally tell me how I'm doing, because I want to be sure to leave a lot of time for talking. But as Swan told you, we have a group called Redwood Coast Connect that was created in 2007. And there's a few of us, Sean's on the call, that have been doing this for 15 years, trying to get better broadband here. We did a regional plan in 2009 and determined that the biggest problem we had was the lack of backhaul capacity, which is that middle mile piece. And that was really hampering business expansion. And I want to emphasize that there is no federal policy about getting broadband to economic development. There's policy around getting broadband to schools, to hospitals, even to some public parks and places, but there is no policy for economic development. And so we recognized that right away and said, holy cow, if we do not include economic development on our planning, they are going to get left out. So, so that's something to think about, but there are no grant funds for economic development. There's really, you're on your own. And then because of the cost of developing here, we had existing providers who knew like how to design plans to get better broadband, but it's just not attractive to doing them. So they couldn't afford to pay for really the upgrades that were necessary. So we knew we had to band together and create a plan. And so what we did was we created a plan that included creating 6 middle miles that would provide access to 98% of the households in our region. So the good news is we've made a lot of progress. We did a project across Highway 36, and that's why Suddenlink's able to provide robust service to Frank Whitlatch's home. That project helped HSU out dramatically as well. And it's why most of us don't have as many outages as we used to a long time ago. The Karuk and Eureka tribe got together and they have a fully funded project to pull fiber from Orleans to Humboldt Bay. This has been one of our dream projects. And they are in the permitting stage for that project. Highway 199 in Delaware County was a big project that we were really excited about, and that took care of a lot of Delaware County's needs. And then the project that, I mean, this is like my Don Quixote project, which is 299, which would be 283 miles from Reading to Hoopa to Humboldt Bay. I keep saying when that project's finished, I'm retiring. That would be my life goal, to have that project finished. Petrolia got upgraded by Frontier Communications a few years ago. Hoopa has a grant pending, which is on the agenda for the 14th of January at the state. It was supposed to be funded last year, but the president pulled it from the agenda at the last minute in December. Smith River got pulled as well. They have a grant pending and they're on the calendar for January. And then the big project, which we'll spend time talking about, which is the cable landing project that's coming to a city called Eureka soon. There's other good news projects. T-Mobile. I know I have the word 5G in here, and we can talk about 5G, but they are going to deploy 5G to county fairgrounds throughout the state. And priority is going to be given to fairgrounds like our fairgrounds, like Redwood Acres, right outside the city limits, because of the fact that we have economic development there. So the latest really good news project is that should say was awarded 2.8 million. I mean 24.8 million. I left the million off of that slide, but yesterday we just met with the Theric Networks. They are going to be a new provider in our region. Because they just participated in an FCC project, and some of the sites that they will be doing are like some of your industrial areas and your opportunity zones in Eureka. So we're waiting to see what their plans are, but they're coming soon. Here is a copy of the T-Mobile build out that's planned in the future. And as you can see, they've got plans to improve service in the Humboldt Bay area. So let me just cover the bad news for a while. No, in spite of everything that went on with broadband last year and all the need, the legislature could not agree on moving any broadband policy done. Some of the bills suck. The bills that suck are, of course, the telecom bills. And we'll talk about the policy more. We worked with companies to submit grant proposals for Crescent City, Smith River, Mad River, Garberville, Alder Point, Laytonville, Leggett, Piercy, all of those proposals, because the state has such a low broadband threshold. All of them were challenged because, can you believe it? They are considered served by the state of California's legislation. And so we don't know, I mean, none of them got through. We got zero money from the state in from the public utility district last year to take care of any broadband needs in our region. So we're hoping we do better in this year. We've got, like I said, 2 proposals that'll be on the agenda in January. And so that really leads, so if Laytonville and Leggett and Piercy have enough, you can imagine there is no funding at the state of California to help with Eureka. And so we're going to have to get creative about how we pay for broadband, because the state is not going to help. So I am going to then show you this map. Because we're having an economic development conversation, and many of you have heard about the cable landing project, probably. The cable landing project is going to go to Indonesia. And this is a unique opportunity for us to have a fiber optic project that will connect us to the part of the world that has more people living in it, that is extremely interested in the things we do. They're interested in fisheries, they're interested in forestry, they're interested in alternative energy. They're interested in food and agriculture. I'm sure they would love our milk, and our dairy. So there's really an opportunity to recruit and to develop businesses that could potentially use the connectivity to communicate and develop markets to this portion of the world. And I know Eureka has been thoughtful about zoning, economic development zoning. So, if we can connect broadband to these areas of the world, there are opportunities to develop industry connections. So I just show this map because I want you to start dreaming. We've got to dream big.
Connie,
Yeah.
that's the cable landing project. Are you talking about a cable that runs from Indonesia to Eureka?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that is the upcoming cable project, and they are deep in permitting now. So let me go to the chat. Yeah. Oh, okay. So let me talk to you about, as I said, there's almost no hope coming from legislation for solving our problems. But let me cover legislation just briefly. So far, this is what we've got that's been introduced on the state level. SB 4 is Gonzalez's bill, and this is my favorite bill. Because at least it starts talking about local government bond financing. And it acknowledges that local governments have some say in deciding about infrastructure needs. And also it has high enough speeds that maybe Eureka could qualify to participate in this bill. So this is my favorite bill. It's also Sean's favorite bill. And I think some of you took a position last year when this was SB, Sean, SB, what was it last year? 110. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway.
I'll just note the County Office of Ed did sign on to that as well last year.
Okay. Yeah. This is our favorite bill. So we're trying again. This bill looked like it was going to move, and in the middle of the night, the telecom companies killed it. The other bill that you'll hear a lot about is AP 14, and that's Agla Curry's bill, and it's a dog. This is the bill that is the same old strategy. So, okay, so this is my therapy rant time. I always say when we do broadband, I have to have a little therapy session and do a little rant. So you would never leave it to Pacific Gas and Electric to determine how much electricity comes into your home, right? You can count on using as much electricity as at your home as you're willing to pay for, right? And they're, as a utility, they are responsible for getting you what you need. But that is not how we deal with broadband. In the world of broadband, we tell the companies they can decide how much your community has. And not only that, but we'll protect them from other people coming in and providing better service or more service. So, the state of California's strategy has been, I think, I'm going to use a sewer analogy. It's a let's make sure every household can flush once a day strategy. So we're not going to upgrade or help anybody upgrade until every household in the state of California can flush their toilet once. Now, I live alone, and maybe it'll still be a little stinky around my house, but I might be able to live with a flush once strategy, but I'm sure all of you don't live alone and a flush once strategy doesn't work. And so, that's really why, forgive my language, but AB 14 is a piece of shit because it's a flush once strategy. It says we're going to put $1 billion in the fund, but only if you can't flush can you come and use this fund. But at the same time, we're going to fund telehealth, but we're not going to fund the building that has the telehealth equipment, but we're not going to fund the people who are using the telehealth. you know, so we really need to like break the strategy of putting money aside for companies to determine what level of service you need, and go to a model where communities can build what they need and figure out how to pay for it. And so we have tried since 1996 to get telecoms to pay attention to us, and we bribed them better and better every year, and they still aren't doing it. So we need to like treat this like any other infrastructure, and break the subsidy and the begging and pleading. The rest of the bills on here are placeholders. They have titles, but there's no content. There's some of them potentially could be promising. This AB 34 is going to be some kind of a big bond fund. At least that's what we're looking at, but there's no details yet. Wood also, Assemblymember Wood also has a broadband infrastructure placeholder bill that is about dig once policy. I noticed Brad was on the call, you know, that Assemblymember Wood has been trying to get infrastructure, the state to be better about coordinating infrastructure. So he's put a placeholder that as well. The SB 28, Sean's waiting to see the details on, because that's that bill will be of concern to Access Humboldt. And then there's ACA 1 is mostly is a placeholder for something in case we want to do something, but this would essentially add the ability to go after bond funding and add housing and broadband to allowable uses for bond funding. So I'm checking the chat here to see what Sean says. Okay, as do other jurisdictions. Then there's the school facilities, you know, something to allow for more schools facilities. So it's early in the session. We're on a watch and see, but you know, if you're asking me, I can't make it clearer. I'm looking at a SB 4 and not looking at AB 14. So there's going to be a lot of pressure. There'll be a lot of people who are looking at AB 14 because the coalition's been big, but it's time to break with I mean, AB 14 is a re-up of the bill that thinks that Laytonville has too much broadband. So, okay, so let's talk policy, and I'm rounding up here, guys. So we're gonna get to you. We're gonna get to you guys soon. So my dear friend Steve Blum has a great site with tons of policy on it. But these are the policy pieces that I think the city should look at. I put micro trenching on here. Right now, you know, one of the biggest costs to putting fiber in the ground is digging a hole and putting conduit in it. And so there are some other potential techniques, maybe using the trail system and micro trenching. Since Eureka has the best shape of any city when it comes, especially the economic development along that Bay Trail, you can get fiber deployed to a lot of places through that system that are cool. Dig once, as I've mentioned, is a policy that says if somebody digs a hole, they need to tell everybody else who might potentially need that hole that the hole's there, so everybody can throw their stuff in at the same time. Open trench policies are, you know, are also just to, you know, allow everyone to use. There's a little bit of difference between dig once. In a dig once bill, oftentimes, like if nobody else puts conduit in, the city of Eureka would put conduit in that they could then lease out later. In an open trench policy, you just tell everybody, hey, come on, the trench is open. And then there's shadow conduit as well. But why do we care about this? Because it's 10 times more expensive to dig up than repair a road than it is to just get all the conduit you need in once. Also, I know this isn't really popular, but wireless policies, companies are not going to dig up the roads on the tiny streets. And they want to go wireless. And if you look, the big companies are going to spend more and more money on wireless deployment. So if it's really hard to put up a tower, and you've got a lot of community complaints about putting up a tower or putting up equipment, the company's got plenty of other places they can go and build. Right? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Connie, and I would think too that wireless is that last mile connection, but not the middle mile.
Yeah. There is one company, 101 Netlink, has a really robust point-to-point wireless network, but most of the other companies don't. They use wireless as a last mile strategy. The other thing, thanks John for mentioning it too, is you can think about your buildings, water towers, and other facilities that could potentially have wireless devices on them that could access communities. So, every governmental facility could potentially help at distribution. And then let me just cover a few demand size policies to think about too. Telecommuting policies, public service and digital inclusion policies, workforce development policies, and I cannot tell you how important rapid permitting is for businesses. We're in Arcata, as you probably know, we're putting in the data center, right? So it's not going to be the only data center. But if somebody called you tomorrow and said, hey, I'd like to put a data center in X, Y, and Z corner, how quickly could they get a permit? Because you're going to be competing along that entire line. And if they can get a permit faster in Blue Lake than they can get a permit in Eureka, they're going to Blue Lake, right? So thinking about rapid permitting for tech businesses or pre-permitting discussions is critical. And then guys, housing. Everything is going to be dependent on housing. We had a conversation with St. Joe's on Monday that we lost another doctor because he couldn't find quality housing. So after you spend $60,000 recruiting a doctor and he leaves town because he can't find a rental house that he likes, we can't keep affording to do that. So, the tech companies are going to come and if somebody came tomorrow and said, hey, we want to put 50 employees in the city of Eureka and they're going to make $150,000 a year. Are there 50 houses nearby? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
A little update on that. We just recently passed our all-time Humboldt County's all-time high for average home price. Mm-hmm. So there is very little on the market. It is going for outrageous prices. We need some additional supply in a huge way. Yeah. Well, and as a matter of fact, I think we really hit a point where we can't recruit until we address some housing issues here. So that's why I throw it on as the most important broadband policy of them all. And so I'll just end my presentation with, it's time to dream. What could we do if we had more? Because it is coming soon.
Let me start by asking if anybody has any questions. I hope I haven't talked Connie too badly. You all are feeling better about being able to have broadband conversations.
We have three groups here, and I think just a couple of people from the public. And since this is a workshop, I'll go ahead and open up questions to anybody. We won't worry about doing that like public comments separate from everybody else's comment. So if anybody has questions. Thank you, Bill.
You're on mute, Bill.
And you're still on mute.
Sorry about that, everybody. So the cable comes here from Indonesia, and I'm under the understanding, and maybe you can correct this or elaborate, that a local service provider will have to work with the people bringing the cable to get it to help our actual community. And that really worries me that, you know, it's going to be Suddenlink or AT&T, and they're going to throttle this thing rather than be able to let us truly be in the mix with it. How's that work in this world?
I'm so glad you set me up for that one. So there are a couple of companies that are big enough to be working on negotiating our own individual contracts. But this is a beautiful opportunity perhaps for the city of Eureka. All right. So, you know, there's the cost of actually getting bandwidth is not nearly going to be as expensive as the distribution of it. You know, when I started this work, when we started Redwood Coast Connect, our slogan was do it or we'll do it for free. In other words, do it or we'll use, you know, state money to do it. And so when I say dream and be creative, there's a question out there for, is there an opportunity to compete? Is there I mean, I don't know what that opportunity looks like, and I'm not going to say it's not expensive. But, you know, is there an opportunity to figure out a group that wants to provide better service?
And you think that's likely the best solution rather than our two current service providers?
Well, no, because I think the reality of the situation is if you threaten to provide service, they're going to have to up their game. Competition. I'm a shameless Democrat, but don't get me started about business because I get very sounding rabbit. You know, the competition is the best way to improve service and reduce price, right? So, you know, the second anybody threatens any of these companies, you're going to see an increase in service. So that's where the do it or we'll do it for free comes in the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My understanding is that we basically have two providers. AT&T is limited by the copper wires that they send out. Suddenlink raises their rates, seems like twice a year, whether they need it or not. Is that true? And then the second part of that, my question, to what degree would the open trenching dig once strategy, I mean, I'm just tickled to death, Brian Gerving, at what the city's doing with the gas lines and the sewer lines and the sewer laterals. Yes, it's a pain when the street's blocked off for a week, but it's so nice when the project's done and all that infrastructure is replaced at once and, you know, we can move on. Would that kind of, open up a trench, digging once, offering that to any provider to increase our access, would that be helpful to get some competition?
Was that for Connie?
Oh, I thought that was for Brian.
It's for everybody.
Brian's really not going to take up his mic and try that. Okay, come on, Brian, help me out here.
I will say that, you know, we are currently planning our first trial run for fiber, at least fiber conduit in the street. We had planned originally to do a fiber network between city facilities and implementing that over the course of several years. And the first trial of that was going to be a micro trenching project between our Parks Corporation yard on the very north end of the Sequoia Park over to the water treatment plant. So relatively short distance, just see how it works. We are at this point now with a pretty large scale project on Henderson Street, all the way from F down to Fairfield. We're looking at the cost of adding into that project conduit to provide fiber, the option for fiber in the future. And what we're doing right now is developing the standards that we would use either for city conduit or for franchise conduit. Where does it need to be within the street section? Because typically we have water and sewer on one side of the street, and then we've got dry utilities. So power where there's underground power, gas is on the other side of the street. Where within that do we want the fiber to be eventually, so that it's not going to conflict? Because if we have a water main break, we don't want to take out fiber line. We also don't want to have to dig around it. So all of those things are being developed right now, and hopefully we'll see our first conduit for fiber in the future go into the ground this spring, summer, when we construct the Henderson Street project.
Beautiful. And now Connie or anybody else, would the access to that motivate AT&T, Suddenlink, or any third party to come in and say, hey, we want to up our game in providing, you know, broadband, increased broadband service to the people in those areas?
Well, so there's, as I said, there's other issues involved, like how quickly could they get a permit to upgrade? So if you think in terms of AT&T, most of their upgrades are going to occur wirelessly. So if what's going to limit them is your community's ability to permit wireless. So it's not just a linear line to we need more service in that case. You know, how annoying is your community is really key. And so, you know, one of the conversations we've thought about having with the companies is where do we need to site, like where are there problems with wireless communication? Where are mobile phones going out? You know, like every day when Frank and I talk on the phone and I go for a walk and my cell phone cuts out at the same spot, you know? And so like, how do we figure out where those spots are? And then how do we pre-permit? And how, you know, and what does that look like? And if we can't pre-permit, then we know there's not going to be investment there, you know? You know, or do we want to pre-permit and we want to own the tower and we want to lease the tower? You know, I mean, you know, or is it a water tower? You know, is it 3 water towers instead of a big tower or something? So, I mean, there could be some planning that we do and strategy around specific areas. Like, how do we get more service to this area? So that's part of the issue too. And then there are areas, quite frankly, where we know they're not going to invest, right? And so what do we do as a community to invest in those areas? So, I mean, that's what the tribes are doing, for example. They're like, we know nobody's going to help us, you know, for a whole lot of reasons. So maybe we're just going to buy enough capacity and we're going to help ourselves. And that's been their strategy. And that needs to be the strategy for communities as well.
So, yeah, Jeff, you have a question, and then Leslie, and then I have a question after that.
I probably should defer to you. I've already spoken a ton, but I'm also reading, I think it's Sean's comments. If AT&T and Suddenlink don't want to come alongside and work with Brian Gerving as we, for example, just that Harris Street project, if we put the cable or the conduit in, would that, would that be an opportunity for us to create our own local broadband company that would help distribute, broadband? That's the kind of thing I'm wondering, is that feasible?
And I'll say, but since my question was so much along that, I know we've talked about municipal broadband, and it sounds like what you're talking about, Connie, is maybe something in between that, where we're not actually running the utility, but maybe own some of the equipment that we rent out to somebody. So,
the only problem with municipal, the only problem I have with municipal is that are you going to be able to invest the kind of cash into it that is going to make you competitive? So ultimately, that's the problem. However, a strategy to get to a certain place and pick off a certain anchor is probably a better strategy. And since I'm talking to the economic development folks, a strategy that addresses economic development where you're going to get income, and probably people are going to stick with you, is a better strategy than trying to go after households, perhaps.
And Leslie?
Yeah, I have one question related to that, and then maybe one question somewhat related to the question that Aaron just posted in the chat. The first would be about the kind of municipal concept, which, my understanding is that it would be more beneficial for some sort of regional approach to work, just in terms of actually leveraging the entire community to address cost and access. Like, what would be the best, would Redwood Coast Connect be the best way of facilitating that? Is that still, or would there be some other, like, how can we support that conversation happening, or at least the investigation towards that happening?
I am reaching out to a few big state partners to say, how can we help? For those of you who know, RCRC has they're the rural counties lobbyist. They have a economic development wing that was looking at how do we get into rural broadband, and they have bonding authority. The communities have bonding authorities. We don't like JPAs around here, but there are other entities that have potentially bonding authorities. So if we could figure out how to price out something, we could look at doing something. Yeah, I definitely would have to call in the right consultants. What I worry about is all of the cities, all of these cities who are trying to build these big master plans that end up being $1 billion or, $100 million or something. I'm not recommending anybody pay to do a plan that they know their community is not going to afford. So that's why I'm taking a bite off a piece you can chew, instead of trying to get everybody a Lexus when you're only going to be able to afford a Honda. So yeah, and there's a question in the chat from Aaron, and Brian, why don't you talk about your micro trenching policy?
Ask that question out loud.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that we read that question out loud so people could hear it who are just watching this. So.
Oh, great. Okay, we may have already covered this, but do we have microtrenching ability, or are we able to use existing overhead lines? Brian, you want to take that?
I'll take the first part, and then actually I had the same question for you for the second part, which is not necessarily existing overhead lines. There's a lot of copper up there and coax, but does fiber have the ability to be above ground overhead? In a lot of areas where we talk about undergrounding, it's because the other utilities are already underground. But as far as microtrenching goes, yes, that's one of the alternatives that we're looking at. for the Henderson project and for other projects where you're not disturbing the street, because it is really attractive in terms of restoration. The other option we would look at for streets that aren't being torn up is directional drilling, directional boring. It's a little bit more complicated because you have to worry more about utility conflicts. That's why you see when PG&E is directional drilling their new gas lines, they still have to open up a pothole at every sewer lateral that they're crossing to make sure they're not conflicting with it, because there have been problems with that in the past. So we're looking at those alternatives. And like I said before, determining where within the street does it make sense to locate that fiber conduit away from other utilities, but still in a spot that's accessible in the future when you want to add junction boxes, pole boxes, and things like that.
Yeah.
Some would define micro trenching.
Micro trenching is where you do a trench, usually just with a grinding wheel that can go through the asphalt and the base and whatever's underlying it, about 2 inches wide, usually, sometimes wider. And it's basically wide enough for whatever conduit you're putting in it, or pair of conduits. And then the restoration is a whole lot simpler. Usually there are companies that make products specifically for patching that last part of the top, and it remains somewhat flexible, and it doesn't require that you do hot patch asphalt at the surface, which would be difficult to do for something that narrow. Now, if we're doing like Henderson, we're going to be tearing up the whole street, redoing all the wet utilities, and then we're going to be overlaying it. So in that case, we just may micro trench and install the conduit and then pave over the top of it.
And as Sean mentioned, you can have joint pole agreements and to do overhead utilities. One of the issues is that when you're using utility poles, you have to pay or you have to replace 10% of the poles now at a minimum. And so it can potentially get expensive to repay for that infrastructure. So when we did Highway 36, we did it over pole replacements, and we budgeted for 10% and had to go back for another $1.4 million because PG&E needed more of our poles replaced. So
Connie, do you know if there are any local entities that have done that kind of thing, but leverage their franchise agreements with, say, Suddenlink, with a cable provider or with PG&E to somehow get around that? The 10%.
Sean, time for you to come in. You would know the answer to this question.
Well, cable franchise agreements included requirements for Suddenlink or their predecessors. Now Altice is the owner, the parent company, but cable franchises require them to provide some network. It's called the PEG network, Public Education Government Network assets. But unfortunately, I mean, that exists, but it's hard to leverage that into the other access that you're looking for. I mean, essentially, cable operators have a right to attach to poles and conduits. And the goal was to use their right to do that, which the state, that's now through the Public Utilities Commission, and that all goes through the state. So essentially, we've been mostly preempted by the state in that regard, is my understanding. It is in play in the sense that any new player who comes in who doesn't have that sort of existing authority under a cable franchise. So for example, when Vero Networks came in and was talking to the city of Arcata about getting permits to do conduit to the co-location facility, they were very much ready to talk about, okay, well, what do you need? Oh, okay, you need us to put an extra conduit in there for the city? Fine, we'll do that. So I think there's in the competitive, if there are new providers coming in and there's new developments occurring, sorry, I'm digressing a little, but there is an opportunity there to use a combination of dig once and public investment to secure a direct asset, that you can use right away.
Jeff?
And I don't know how efficient it would be, but I do know that from a real estate perspective, sending utilities underground and getting rid of poles. I mean, I know that's pricey and requires a heck of a lot of coordination, but it certainly increases property value. We require new developments to do that anyway. So if there's some way we could leverage big projects in old neighborhoods to do that also, that might be a benefit.
Natalie and then Leslie, or Councilmember Arroyo, then Councilmember Castellano. I've been casual.
Thank you. No, that's fine with me. So I have a couple of questions. I'd like to hear more about the fiber optic, the landing site. I understand. Great. This is the first I've actually heard that it's Indonesia. But what does that mean for us? What will that facility be like? Honestly, my knowledge of that is pretty limited. But then it also seemed like you really highlighted some policy opportunities that seem like low-hanging fruit in some ways, and that they are certainly lower cost and sort of might indicate that we are more receptive to and interested in supporting projects that improve broadband and in some ways increase competition. But after, just as an aside, after our last year's discussion around an additional infrastructure on the water tower and the controversy surrounding that, I realize it might be easy to pass individual policies, but then projects that come up may bring those into clear focus for the community and cause more concern. So while I think we could pass policies that support actions like that more broadly, I do still think we would perhaps face community challenges when people actually realize what it consists of, and that it might be in their neighborhood. So anyway, I'd like to hear a little bit more about both of those things, because it seemed like that's the stuff we know we can do something about, or we know is coming.
Okay, so the Harbor District has signed an agreement to land potentially up to 4 cables. The first one goes to Singapore, and there are other cables. They're landing up to 4, but there are more opportunities coming. So that cable will land out Harbor District's current leased property, and then it will terminate in the city of Arcata. Well, that'll be one termination part. It will continue to go down Old Arcata Road and end finally at your PG&E on Myrtle. So that's one project. We are also hoping for a project that will be that 299. That's my windmill Don Quixote project, and that would be from the PG&E site to Reading.
Don't say it's a windmill project. You're going to get people really confused.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I know what you meant. Thankfully, I got the literary reference, but.
Okay. Anyway, like I said, I'm retiring the day that project's done. So, at least maybe not. And so, yeah. So that project is in permitting now. And the company that Vero Networks is a company that is actually going to be bringing it from the Harbor District into Arcata and then off into Eureka. So, and we met with Vero, the week before Christmas or something like that. They're absolutely lovely guys. But that project's moving fast. It could be done in a year. They're making progress. They're in a big hurry. What does that project mean for us? there is a group of folks that are looking at what economic development opportunities will they bring along with it. And the first one is that data center. But ultimately that project is going to, that project is about transmitting further east, probably to Chicago or beyond. And so that's why it's an opportunity to get the other 299 project done as well. Because they've got, once they land here, they got to get the data out of here. But they are more than willing to talk about other economic development uses along the way. So I don't think I'll get in trouble with by saying that HSU is in deep conversation with them about potential for research opportunities for us. And then let me just respond, another policy that as we're talking, building existing housing to be fiber ready, making sure your developers are doing what they can to make houses ready, the new houses that are getting built in the community, I think is critical. So all we have to do is hook them up at the street. I was lucky enough 10 years ago to remodel, and I put Ethernet throughout my house. So I'm not using wireless in my home. I plug directly in to the line. So that helps dramatically with my home speed. So, when you're building developments, I'm mortified when I was on the Arcata City Council and how few plugs I put into the community center. Like if you're ever remodeling the Warfinger or something, you now know how many plugs you need, how many things you do. So thinking about that in all of your buildings too is critical. To your response, I think I focus on fiber so much, but addressing that wireless issue is critical just because of the cost difference. So I can't help you. I know there are neighborhoods that that really are agitated, and we could have the 5G conversation. And part of the 5G conversation goes like this. One day you're going to wake up and your phone's going to say 5G, because for some people, 5G is just a marketing tool. It's not going to be something different. But there is a narrow spectrum that is of concern to people. But I'm afraid everybody's going to consider all wireless 5G, and that's just not the case. So then when we talk about small cells.
Could I just add to that real quick, Connie? Because I think the map you showed about the T-Mobile's plans and the presentation that we were part of about what they call 5G is really a completely different flavor than if you talk to somebody in an urban area, they're talking about something that's completely different. They're calling it 5G, but it sort of depends on where you are, what they call it. So anyway, I thought that was important note.
Yeah. So we are not going to have what everybody's really afraid of. We are not going to have AT&T putting stuff on every street light up here. There's just not an economic development case for that. And I don't know. I can talk. I just can talk until I'm blue in the face. That's all. But it's not the same thing.
Jeff, I just wanted to check. I know Leslie had her hand up a long time ago, so we'll get Leslie and then Jeff.
Great. Were you finished, Connie, with that? Okay. Let's see. Both of these questions are kind of about right of way. One is maybe a question for Brian. Do we have kind of control to access to our trails and things like that?
In most cases, yes. In some cases where we, not so much currently, but in the future, we may have trail easements as opposed to owning the property. And even in some cases, we have trail easements now that are not also utility easements. And it's those that could be a little bit trickier, though. We've talked before with Connie and with Brad about a justification for calling data a type of transportation. You're transporting data, that kind of thing. But trail is, that's a very specific easement. Now, would it be too difficult to transition a trail easement into an easement for fiber conduit? Probably not. The other way around, that's a whole lot trickier with neighbors. But yeah.
Great. And then maybe this is somewhat I guess this is to Brad, since you're here. Thanks for being here, Brad. And that's, I know there have been conversations happening about accessing the Caltrans right of way and things like that. Do you know where those conversations are at currently?
Well, I can't tell you if Connie scrolled back in her presentation to where all the projects were listed. Don't do it, Connie. I'm just suggesting if you picture that slide, most of them were named for highways. You got the 199 project and 299 project. Vero Networks is talking to us about 255 to get out to the landing site. So that's part of why I'm here. There's a tremendous amount of interest. This administration and prior administrations have expressed support for the development of broadband within the state right of way. The hard part for Caltrans is we don't necessarily know how to do that right yet. So that's part of what I'm trying to do, is gather as much information as I can to help inform us internally. I was on the conversation with our person in charge of broadband for design in headquarters just earlier this week. So it's a very volatile issue that we're trying to get on top of as quickly as we can.
Can I just add, Brad has been amazing to work with. And having said that, Brad, no bridge in the state of California should ever be built without broadband conduit on it, because Arcata has a big thank you, because if there was conduit on that Samoa Bridge for broadband, that data center would be in Eureka instead of in Arcata. And so, that's one of the real struggles, is the things like that. So,
well, if it helps, current bridge design includes a hollow soffit for utilities.
Yeah. So that will help tremendously. And then the other project is Last Chance. Greg, can you believe that Willits got built? I mean, we waited 93 years for Willits to get built, and no conduit for broadband.
But we did ask the city of Willits what we could do in the city. They just couldn't answer us fast enough. And so we wound up putting conduit under the sidewalk. If they ever need it, they'll have to find it. But they couldn't tell us where they wanted to go.
Yeah. We love having Brad here. He's important.
Excellent. Jeff. And then Bill, were you just moving your hand? I just want to make sure I caught you if you had a question too. No, it looks like that's a no.
That's a no.
Okay. I also see Kim moving a lot, so I just want to make sure none of those movements are hands. Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
No, my kids just got home, so no.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody being here. I've learned so much from, just this one meeting. It's been great. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how kind of that mid-level connection goes. So if we've got this big cable coming in from Singapore that's going to end up in PG&E on Myrtle Avenue, and I'm just guessing, Brian, at some point, maybe Harris Street is going to get a new sewer main installed. And if we connected that down to PG&E with some fiber optics, that could open up a whole lot more broadband to all those, to the hospitals via Harrison, to all the businesses on Harris. Is that the type of thing that we're talking about? Would that work? And would that be a way to increase the value and maybe do some development of that? I'm thinking particularly of the West Harris part of town, which is kind of, from a market perspective, businesses would say it's less desirable. But if they've got screaming internet, would that help? if the hospital had access to better, more bandwidth, would that make transmitting real data dense medical files between here and UCSF or Stanford better? Am I understanding that correctly, or am I way off base?
Who's answering that one?
Oh, that's such a Brian. I mean, that's such a Brian.
Well, I really think that, I mean, the feasibility of getting conduits in the ground in the future with projects, yeah, or even without projects. We've had our first recent contact from a telecom contractor just this week, working on behalf of an unnamed client. They tend to be pretty tight-lipped. So we are, waiting to see what they're looking for, but they want to know standards, some of the things that I've talked about that we would be developing for our own city infrastructure as well. But I think the question of what would that mean for businesses, and how would that conduit or that fiber be used to get the service to the customer? I think that's a question for Connie, I hope, because it's not for me.
I'm going to let everybody know too that Larry Otker just got into the group. So since we are making this a conversation, he's the executive director of the Humboldt Bay Harbor District, where they will be bringing in the line. So if anybody has questions for him, he's available.
Larry, were your ears burning, Larry? Because we we covered the cable landing.
I'm available if you want me to say anything.
I think, does anybody have any questions for anybody? I think that we might be wrapping this up. And also, we're not going to do public comment because we've included everybody. So if you have any regular comments, you can make those now as well. Go ahead, Leslie.
Maybe first I have a question and then I have comments, but I'll wait on those. And then also, I don't know, I know, thanks for being here too, Larry. I know you missed some of the meeting, but if you do just want to say anything from your vantage point about the cable landing, be interested to hear it. But in terms of, let's say this is maybe following a little bit Jeff's line of thinking, but let's say we want to create a map of, right, we're not going to bury broadband down every street, or cable down every street, but like I'm imagining we would want to have a conversation with maybe like some community partners that might also be interested in participating in developing that map, for like the Providence, for instance, or something like that. Is that the kind of, would we okay, since we're doing comments too, I'm supportive of, developing a potential pathway or map of like where we want this cable to go. So, would the next step in that be, or one of the next steps be to kind of have a stakeholders conversation in which, and Sean, I see your message, and, some of us did already contribute to a map, or we thought it'd be great if there were points of access. So I guess, would we hold a stakeholder conversation? Would that be one of the next steps in developing that, if there's interest in that?
I think we'd ask that to maybe City Manager Slattery and Connie, in terms of how we're handling it within the city, and what the next steps would be. And also Brian, of course. Of course.
I would think
Miles has been so quiet.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Castellano. I think that this group here would be a pretty good stakeholder group to help develop a map like that. I think it's a good idea. I think that one of the things that I'm thinking along the lines of what Connie said is, the Waterfront Trail is a pretty darn good alignment there. And to get access further, the Beta Zoo is potentially being funded, and that would go from the Waterfront Trail up towards, the Harris area there too. So that could be a possibility as well, but developing the map would be good. And unfortunately, the comment about Harris, Jeff, it would have been nice to know all of this back when we did the sewer line on Harris that we did. When was that, Brian? About 10 years ago, something like that. 7.
Gosh, I'm not sure sewer, but even the Mad River pipeline that we reconstructed out to Myrtle Avenue and to the water treatment facility, which was completed in 2016, 2017. So yeah, I mean, in hindsight, a lot of projects would have really been good candidates to include conduit in. We did develop a pretty comprehensive list of community anchor facilities that Connie requested, and she really kind of kept at us for developing that list. Oh, is that the map?
This is the first draft of the map. Yes. So this is what the anchors look like.
And in developing the for the capital improvement program, the city network of fiber between facilities, we've got facilities that are kind of spread out throughout the city. And in developing that, we've tried to think of what are the alignments that would make sense and where are the intersection points that would help connect business centers and neighborhoods to that network in the future if there's capacity for someone else to have conduit or to jump into the conduit that's there.
Connie, can you tell us a bit about the legend on that map? There are different colored dots. Is that a priority or?
No, actually, let me get a copy of the map with the my staffers are still working on it, and that's my bad for bringing it in before they finish putting the ledger. But the ledger is those are community education, governmental points, healthcare points, and public safety points. Along those and all sorts of different questions. I mean, different colors. So,
and what is an anchor? What is an anchor?
An anchor institution is an institution that's using a lot of bandwidth potentially. So, so when you asked earlier, well, who can afford to be part of that pipe? There's also like an opportunities to think differently. Like, for example, hotel chains need to have a bandwidth that people can buy in the lobby. So is there a way to band them all together to provide service to all of them? And they need a bulk service. Same thing with healthcare. Maybe one healthcare provider can't do it, but if you put them all together, you start to develop a case for costs. So what we look at is, in schools, for example, are perfect like that. You multiply users there. So one of the conversations we're having in Arcata, this is being recorded, so I have to be very careful, is like, we have school kids that aren't on the campus anymore. So is there some network we can set up and some way to provide them service that they can still log in? Well, let's say we know we have a majority of HCOE kids in one housing complex. Why don't we light up that housing complex, right? Okay, yeah, there's going to be a few people in that building that aren't students, but let's say if it's 75% students, we come up with the number and we just figure out how to light up the places that we know people need to be. Susan's on the call. So Madam Mayor, childcare facilities, like, is there a way we want to make sure that every childcare facility has enough bandwidth that, their students can be doing quality instead of watching just TV, right? So is there a way to, bundle in order to be able to do a large purchase? And then what does the infrastructure look like that takes advantage of that bundle? So that's why the waterfront is so, like I said, you've got that awesome waterfront along there with bundling potential.
I just want to say this is very important to me, that quality public television is a very good teaching tool for preschoolers. So we don't want to badmouth that.
And quality television is online too.
It is. We're going to have Larry Odker and then Aubrey Richardson are going to ask questions. So Larry. Oh, you're muted.
It's my first Zoom meeting. I'm sorry. I've been listening for your whole meeting. Is that, and I must say that, I looked on your website for the last hour and I was not able to find any way to connect to the Zoom, on your website. And so I really encourage you to take a second look and to make it easy for the public to access these. And so, but with that said, is that we are, signed the lease agreement, and I was talking to RTI Infrastructure, who's the one that's doing the Trans-Pacific fiber optic line. And the first one is the deal is basically 4 cable landings that we have. Initially, what their plan is to put in 3 10-inch conduits that would go a mile out. And they believe that they've sold the first 2 cables, one to Singapore and then the second one to Taiwan. And then one of the 10-inch conduits will be vacant, and they'll still have another opportunity with the lease that they have with the Harbor District and also with the State Lands Commission and Coastal Development Permit that they're applying for. And so really we're looking at Singapore and Taiwan, and the drill rigs, if the permits come in place, they could be there July this year. And they want to pull the cables by September. And the reason why July is because they want to be out there before when the crab pots get pulled and the crab season ends, to really reduce the impacts to the fisheries and have the project done before recreational crab season starts in November. They're really sensitive to the fisheries issues out there. And so therefore, my specific request to you, because we have the Planning Commission online, we know that we would like the Eureka to put a letter of support to the State Lands Commission and the California Coastal Commission that says that support these projects, and that it's important to our community that these coastal development permits get issued. And so that's kind of my first request for the city of Eureka, is to do a letter of support to both the State Lands Commission and the Coastal Commission. In the long term, I think that we should be looking at, in all the entities that we've looked at, as we've said, if you look at where the former pulp mill is, there's 2 cable crossings that go under the bay that are authorized, cable crossings that are under the bay. And it said they could, at the pulp mill, they could essentially turn the drill rigs around and bore under the bay from the pulp mill, and would get you directly to the Wharfinger building and or the balloon track right there. Direct, without going through Arcata or anything, with those 3rd or 4th cable landings. And so the Harbor District would like to work with the city of Eureka to come up with a realistic broadband strategy of how can we make it easy for direct connection to Asia from here. And not just looking at the broadband industries, but looking at the financial industries, high-tech industry, gaming, all these different industries that can need to capitalize on these direct connections. And another thing that I really think that we need to be looking at is right now we're looking at broadband communication going to Asia. What the very next thing that is going to happen is there's going to be another lateral connection that's going to go down the coast and connect to Manchester, which gets us closer to the Bay Area for redundancy, not just out, but to go along the coast of California and up to Astoria, Oregon, to get some redundancy along the West Coast, not just going out. Finally, I want to just bring up the conversation, and people should really be thinking about when we look at these broadband Asia connections, the elephant in the room is really China. And the last 4 years, we all know, has been atrocious dialogue between the United States and China. And none of the 4 cables are identified to China. And there's a really lack of cable landings between the United States and China. And so in the next few years, depending upon the geopolitical, some of these cables could go directly to mainland China and have additional outreach to really the entire Asian markets out there. This is a tremendous opportunity, and I think Connie and Sean and all the people that have worked on this have just done a fabulous job, but we really need to take the next step forward and be thinking truly about our 21st century economy. And this really taking a hard look and not just looking at this as a one-time, let's talk about it, really get down in the weeds and start figuring this stuff out.
I agree. Larry, I just want to give you some, in the future, if you're looking for meetings, at the bottom of the picture, there's an agendas, meetings, and videos. And you just click on that, and any of these council meetings, planning commission meetings, all of them are on Granicus there. It should say in progress, and it's right there.
Yeah, but that just allows you to listen. You can't participate.
No, there's a video.
Yeah, just the video. Okay.
Let me just chime in. Sorry. Larry did request, I didn't understand that he wanted to be a part of this meeting. I thought he just was viewing it. And so I didn't send him the Zoom link initially. So my apologies for that misunderstanding, Larry.
That's okay. Thank you.
And now Aubrey.
So I've been hearing a lot of suggestions of policies or just general ideas for policies that Eureka could do. And I'm just wondering if the city has been, forgive my ignorance, but if we have been developing a plan for ways that we can work with this new broadband development. If we have something like written up, or if we're working on that, because it's a lot to try to take in all at once. So it'd be nice to kind of take stock and see where we're at for some of the things that we can do that are reasonable.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with Brian, and there's a group of us that has members of the members that are actually looking at these policies in more detail. So we're working with staff on that.
As Brian said, they're developing plans and specs for, the physical parts of it. And, we've been talking in department head and also amongst staff about pre-permitting possibilities for certain parcels that we have. And, there'll be more to come.
Great. It sounds like you guys are already getting into it. It'd be exciting to kind of see an overview. Because I'm really excited about this line coming in, and I think it's going to bring a lot of big changes to the area. So I definitely appreciate that the city has set up this workshop, and I'm excited to see what else we do.
Excellent. Do we have, Natalie?
Yeah, just to continue with the question I asked earlier a little bit further. It's great to hear that the fiber optic line will end just east of Eureka. But is there still an opportunity for us to have better access to that, to continue that line, to work with the company, to do that? What else is on the table since it hasn't actually happened yet?
Let me say that we're connecting the city of Eureka directly, and so I will leave it to staff. We've already done one introduction meeting between the company, and they have said they would be happy to do it, since they're going to have the crews out here to do a development and bring it to wherever you need it. We're in a public meeting now, and you guys have to decide that, but yes, everybody's willing to work together. So I'm not going to say, hey, this is what you need to do, because you guys are the decision makers. But yeah, all options are open here. So whether you want to do it yourself or you want to work with the companies to have them do it, and put together. There will be those conversations that are going on, and I'm sure staff will be presenting them to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm too dumb about this topic to know what we need other than that we want it. Like, I want the internet here and a lot of it, but you know, admittedly, I need this advice. I think we probably all do, which is why we've set this up. So, and I see Swan added in the chat that she would like to hear your recommendations, Connie, for next steps for the city. And I feel the same way, and how we can better support our neighboring jurisdictions. So I absolutely echo that. I know Leslie's in the hopper though, but I just wanted to give voice to that because I think that is what I'm hoping to hear more of.
Yeah, I thought maybe we could have Leslie, and I don't know how many more questions we have. We'll either be moving towards a break or wrapping up relatively soon. So I thought Connie's recommendations might be nice after Leslie's comments, and perhaps a wrap up. I'm not trying to rush anybody, but.
Let's see. One of the things I'm interested, well, one, I think it would be great to, especially since many of these companies we're going to be working with aren't like from here, local companies. I'm in support of developing regional policies so that it really facilitates the companies' ease to work with us as a region. So that's something, you know, like if we can have, you know, policies that are congruent with the county, with Arcata, with, you know, Blue Lake and the tribes, I think that would help facilitate all of us, you know, thriving as a result of this. Let's see, for Eureka, I am interested in, and I think Brian, you alluded to this, and maybe Miles too, or both of you, but kind of identifying potential sites for some sort of campus, and then, you know, doing the pre-permitting that would help make that easier. Oh gosh, I'm getting some sort of reminder. Okay, that would help make that easier for, you know, when a company wants to land here, for them to kind of have some spaces or places that are kind of build ready or work ready in some way. Let's see. I mean, I think you've already kind of taken this from me, but I'm definitely supportive of using trails, micro trenching, any of that. You know, and then, yeah, I was at a meeting with the Vera Networks group, and they definitely seem very keen to talk. They're the ones doing the fiber from the landing site to Arcata and to Myrtle, and they're, you know, definitely keen to work with the city, you know, or at least converse with the city and see if there might be a possible agreement. So I'm definitely supportive of Brian, Miles, y'all having that conversation. And I think those are the big things I wanted to bring up.
Okay, did anybody have any response to that?
Like I said, Councilmember Castellano, we are, you know, having discussions about the pre-permitting for sites, and I think we have a couple of them that would be ideal, and so there'll be more to come about that. As a matter of fact, Brian was texting me as this was going on. So,
are there any other questions or comments? And if not, we'll have Connie wrap up. But before we do, I want to ask Assistant City Manager Powell. There has been stuff in the chat. We've tried to say it out loud as it comes in, but I think there are a few extra comments. So if we can make that available to the public, the chat, I'd just like to make sure that people felt like they have access to everything.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so now, Connie, what would you like to see as our next steps?
Well, and you know, like I said, I'm really, you know, I'm not here to get ahead of your staff. They've been amazing partners. So I think the real point of this conversation was you all to send them some suggestions and directions so that they could take the input and come back. I agree with Larry Elker. We've spent a lot of time working on how to get this infrastructure here, and now it's coming here. And so it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do with it? And we really need to have some strong emphasis on how are we going to recruit, and how are we going to and how are we going to permit and develop the ability to use the stuff. And as you've heard from your staff, they've got some real good thoughts on that they're going to be bringing to you soon. And then, as I said, I'm talking to almost all of these companies almost on a weekly basis. As a matter of fact, Bureau just put a meeting on my calendar while we were talking for next week. And so, I'm going to connect them directly to staff so you guys can have some conversations. So you'll be seeing more about that. I do agree with Councilmember Castellano. As much as we can do regional policy, that is the ideal. We have been having regular meetings with the regional folks on that. Arcata has already approved a Dig Once policy based on Santa Cruz. That's a really great starting place for the city of Eureka to look. Ideally, what we want to do is not have a situation where the companies have to come for multiple permits and they're all different in each city. It'd be nice for them to be able to just get or to create a situation similar to what we have with the Coastal Commission and others, where one agency can take a lead on permitting, and that all the other agencies will agree to the same conditions for permitting, so that they only have, they can seamlessly and quickly get permits. As Larry had said, they're looking at moving faster than a lot of our when we've been permitting in the past. And so we need to be responsive to that as well. And then, like I said, it's really we need to think bigger. Most of the companies around town do not need the kind of bandwidth that's coming to town. And so how we can bundle, how we can work, with folks, how we can get people used to the fact that we're going to have to pay for this. And it's not going to be free. And how are we going to, how are we going to finance this? So we've put together a group of folks, with some state help from GoBiz around how can we bond finance so we can pay off later. We've done that. We did that with solar, hot water way back in the 70s, right? And people got their systems and then they paid it off on their utility bills for 20 years, and then they paid $1 and then they got their system. So we need that kind of creative idea in order to figure out how to pay for this, because we're going to need about 20 years worth of funding to pay off over time, So we've got a group of regional people that are thinking that through. And then I'm not thinking of everything. I'm not even thinking half of it. So as you all go home tonight and have questions and thoughts, please, I should put my email in the chat, and anyone should feel free to, get engaged or ask me questions. I don't sleep very well, so I answer at crazy times in the middle of the night.
You do have a regular meeting on Wednesdays at 11.
We do have a Wednesday at 11 meeting as well, where we talk broadband. That meeting tends to be very geeky. But we heard about it. We're meeting now every Wednesday, and we have, as Leslie mentioned, we have guest speakers coming in who are coming to provide in this area. So Vero spoke. We had Etheric yesterday, and next week we're going to be talking about stuff, and then we've got other guest speakers for the rest of the month.
So Thank you, Connie and Sean and Brad and Larry, who all came to sort of provide support to Connie. It was really fun getting together with the Planning Commission and the Economic Development Commission and all getting to look at a project together. But unless anybody has anything else pressing, it looked like we might be wanting to wrap this one up right now. Excellent. Thank you for putting this together. It was so important. Talk to you guys so soon.
Thanks, Connie.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Connie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Connie.
Hello.
Aloha, aloha, everybody.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye-bye.
Good night.